Hello people, my name is Ratatoskr and welcome back to your daily Pokémon Legends ZA update video. Today guys, we're going to be starting off with a rumor post, but we have other stuff to talk about as well. First things first is this post over on 4chan, which says the following. Now this was posted on the 29th, as this was actually a very long time ago now, but it has a few things to say and I thought we'd take a look at some of the stuff that's mentioned in here. First things first, it just says Legends ZA leak by Anonymous. He says, a new Pokemon game is coming out and I have some leaks that I want to share. Starting things off, the game is set in a not too distant future. So he's trying to imply the game is going to be set in the future, which is already a theory that we have. Okay, we've already spoken about this before. We've already talked about this before. The idea of the game being set in the future doesn't seem that far-fetched. Now, I know some people would say like, oh, but Legends is set in the past and the word legend is, you know, something from legend, etc. It's like a word that refers to sometimes in the past. However, keep in mind, Pokemon games have legendary Pokemon, which are literally from legend, but they still exist in the future. The game could still be called Legends, and that could just be the kind of like the theming of the game, like the name theming, and they just keep that as like the naming scheme because it's just easier that way, right? If they actually were to give it a different name, maybe it will come off like something else, but who knows? Again, we have no guarantees the game is set in the past or that the game is set in the future, but according to this rumor, it's set in the future. Moving on, it's based around building a perfect city for people and Pokemon to coexist and help each other in the wild, and also trainerless Pokemon. So this is actually similar to this theory post I'm going to be reading here from none else than Kingly. So he actually made a really great post about specifically the concept of, are we going to be the ones building the city? So we're going to talk about that a bit later, but first of all, let's continue throughout the rest of the post. So like I said, it's based around building a perfect city. So a city building game, I don't really mind. If you guys have played any Pokemon fan games, you may know about the game called This Gym of Mine, where you actually build up a gym of your own. You actually build a gym and you become the gym leader and you build out the city, you earn money, etc. It's actually a really cool game, and I would not mind them taking that concept and shoving it into an actual proper Pokemon title. I think that would genuinely be really cool. However, moving on from there though, they say that Pokemon, a city where people and Pokemon can coexist and helping wild and trainerless Pokemon out. I know also that there are parts of the game that you can play as your own Pokemon, but for now, it's only the starters. Okay, so for now, implying that it could be different later, but apparently you're going to be able to play as the starter Pokemon, you know, which would be nice. I guess it's similar to like the idea we talked about before about the Synchro Machine, which if you guys do not know, the Synchro Machine is from Pokemon Pokemon Indigo Disc DLC. It's the second DLC of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. There's a machine called the Synchro Machine. There's a prototype version. They specifically point out it's a prototype, right? It's not the finished product, but it's a prototype of a machine that lets you become the Pokemon. Like, not literally turn into a Pokemon, but control the Pokemon, and then you are actually, like, you play as the Pokemon itself instead of playing as the human character, which is pretty cool. So, again, that idea I've already spoken about, how I think it might actually end up being the inspiration for a lot of stuff, like, especially the inspiration for something like this, like a game where basically we play as the Pokemon rather than the human character, which, again, I'm very much on board for that. Like, I know some people may not be the biggest fans of it, but personally, I'd love that. Like, personally, I would love that. Like, I'm not even going to lie. I personally think that would be really cool. But that's, again, where we're going to continue from there. So the next thing is, I don't know what the starters are. My sources didn't confirm that as of now. Okay. AZ apparently helps with rebuilding the city to hopefully bring back his Floette by creating a perfect city where people and humans are equal. That actually sounds like it wouldn't be too crazy of a plot point. Like, actually, in terms of plot of this game, I wouldn't see that being too much out of the realm of possibility, but it does sound like something that could be real. He says that some rumors suggest a new evolution, but there's no new evolution, which, interesting this guy says this, because I don't think there is going to be a new evolution. I know some people have been saying evolution, a new one. Maybe it would make sense if the game is set in the past, and maybe those evolutions are not possible to get anymore for whatever reason, but I just doubt there's going to be a new evolution. Like, the last time we had one was Sylveon from X and Y, so maybe it would be a cool thing, kind of like almost like in a weird way, to be like, hey, you know, we're going to bring back a new evolution, and of course it's going to match with the last time we had an evolution. Like, that actually would be a really kind of like I would say, not really karmic, but it would be kind of a cool way, like a little nice like connection to make. But again, there's no guarantees for that, so just keep that in mind. There's no guarantees for any of that. It's just what we think as a base of this rumor now. So moving on though, he says, as for Megas, I can only say that Mega Gyarados is coming back, but I have no information on any new or returning Megas except for that. So apparently he only knows that Mega Gyarados is coming back. which is a very specific thing to say. Like, why just Mega Gyarados? Like literally no Charizard, no nothing else. Like, it feels a little bit odd because it's the only thing he brings up here, which is, again, a little bit strange. But again, I digress. Moving on, though, he says that the game is taking place in Lumiose City, and only Lumiose City. No going out or anything, but it's much bigger than Lumiose from X and Y, which is kind of to be expected, right? If this game, based on like everything that we've been told from actually the Pokemon Company, from Nintendo, from everybody that's officially involved, only thing they've told us is it's only within Lumiose City. Like, you are going to be playing within Lumiose City. And literally, the exact sentence was entirely set in Lumiose City. So anybody trying to argue that, like, oh, the game is going to be taking us all around Kalos, no, the literal official news, official, like, stuff has said it's entirely set in Lumiose. Like, that's just not even a question. But he says here, it pretty much reaffirms that, no going out or anything, but it's much bigger than Lumiose from X and Y, which is to be expected, okay? Games based entirely within a single city are not something out of the norm. A lot of games are based on, like, similarly made. Any of, like, I guess the Arkham games, like if you played any of the Batman games, most of those are set within one location, one city, which is not like impossible for them to do. I actually think this game could be better if it's set only within Lumiose. I think it actually might be even a better game that way. Like, genuinely, I think it might be a better game, because then they don't have to spend all this time working on 17 different locations. Instead, they're working on one location. They can perfect that one area more than just making a million different places. Also, this is a Legends game, remember, so they don't necessarily have to go all out with, like, you know, like doing a bunch of these things that they would normally do in Pokemon games. They can go a little bit more chill with it. So yeah, either way, no go now or anything bigger. So the game is supposed to be fully interactive, okay? Meaning you can go inside of every building and talk to any NPC and even challenge NPC trainers to battle yourself. So basically, he's implying that would be the reverse of Pokemon battles normally that we have, or trainer battles, where usually the character that we're dealing with is the one who forces us into a battle if they see us in their peripheral, or like in their kind of like field of view, right, in their cone of vision. If they see us, they will want to battle us. However, he's saying that in this game, it would be the other way around. Actually, we would be battling or challenging people to battles, same way we do it in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, right? Similar kind of premise, at least that's based on what I can see from this. Now, he says there are zones in the game that are exclusively for catching and battling Pokemon, where the catching system from Legends Arceus is implemented, and also you can sneak and jump forward in those zones, so implying that we're going to get the same movement system from, of course, those games, which, I mean, hey, you know, I wouldn't mind that. I think that would be pretty reasonable, to say the least. But again, I'd love to know what you guys think about this. So that is that one. It says outside of these zones, you can only walk or run. Okay, interesting. So you can't, I guess, do this like the sneaking and jumping forward and rolling and dodging and stuff. You can't do that in the regular city, and like in the regular parts of the city, but apparently only in the zones. Okay, outside of these zones, you can only walk or run. Okay, cool. He says, riding your Pokemon is a thing, but only certain Pokemon are rideable. That sounds about right. That sounds like pretty much what they would do in a game like this. It doesn't sound, again, too far-fetched. He says the A in the title stands for a new mythical/legendary Pokemon that is supposed to be a counterpart for Zygarde. Now, this is something we've already spoken about a few times, but yes, it is possible that the A, the one thing you see right above my face here, it possibly is a chance here that this thing could be essentially a brand new, like, legendary Pokemon. I've seen theories, and there's one theory we're going to read in this video about it being based on Ratatoskr. We actually have also a really cool fan art by Subarashi from that specific concept. But again, the theory is that this is supposed to represent either a brand new legendary that's going to be shaped like that, or it's supposed to represent just the ultimate weapon. Either one of those two, we don't really know, but at least that's what people think. That's what people are thinking it might be. Also, keep in mind the Pokemon logo up here has changed color, and the color does feel to me like it matches my gear now a little bit more, or possibly could be the color scheme of a brand new Pokemon, maybe a squirrel of sorts, right? Because there is Ratatoskr, which is a squirrel of sorts, which actually exists within Norse mythology, and it's part of that whole group of like animals and whatnot that you guys may remember from the Tree of Life, which is related to Norse mythology, which is where Zygarde, Xerneas, and Yveltal are all three from. So that's pretty much where we're at in regards to this. But again, I digress. It is all just theories from now, so just keep that in mind. But either way, so where are we at right now? Well, next thing here he says is that the game has the same amount of development time as Legends Arceus, which, yes, a lot of people thought just because the game is coming out next year that this game somehow is going to have like more development time. No, it technically won't, because guess what? This game has probably been in development for about 3 years, which, yeah, by the time it comes out, well, yeah, it's going to be 3 years since it, in development, which, if you think about it, it's not that crazy. That's the same standard, like, length of time that they usually do this kind of stuff. But the weird part is, why announce it now? If the game is coming out late next year, they should announce it, later on. If the game is only really, like, it just feels a bit weird how early they announced it, unless the game is coming out early next year. That's the only thing I can think of. And early could be March, could be April, could be January, February. You never really know. However, there's still, of course, my personal theory and my copium. Okay, I'm coping. I'm coping with this one. All right, you can say it. It's fine. I've got the copium. Me and Gengar here are coping. But basically, I still think there's a chance that we will get another game announcement this year. Like, I still think there's a chance for that. Unless the only thing they plan for this year to be literally like, what do you call it? It's like the only thing they may be planning for this year might be the Pokemon Pocket game, right? It's the only thing I can actually think of. But in terms of, like, when this game is coming out, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if they actually only spent the last 3 years, which it makes total sense. It fits well with their scheduled way of doing things. Because remember, as soon as a new generation comes out, they've already started work on the next gen game, right? They already started work on that. And then Team B, because Game Freak works in Team A and Team B, potentially also some small like split-offs of groups in there that work on different stuff. But Team B is the group that made Legends Arceus, and the same team that usually works on a lot of like, side project stuff and side things, right? DLCs usually. But I think the DLC for Scarlet and Violet was actually made by Team A, but as soon as they're done with everything like that, they move on. Like, as soon as a generation is out, they're done. Like, Team A, the ones that make the new generations, they are done with that generation, and they move on and start working instantly on the next one. That's why Pokemon generations take about 3 years before we get a new one, because that's the amount of time usually that they have set to make the game. So you can assume that when Legends Arceus came out, 2022 was the same time frame that they decided, okay, we've seen the results of this game, let's start working on the next one right away. That's literally how they've done it before as well. I think we can actually look up a little bit of a diagram of this, like Pokemon Legends and Scarlet Violet development time. Like, if we look this up, I think we actually can see how long it took them to develop these games. Like, they actually have a visual representation of this, and I think I want to show this to you guys because some people don't realize the actual time frame in which they work on these things. And there is a whole talk here from that you guys can take a look at. We're going to take a look at this article afterwards, but let's finish off the rest of the rumor, and then I'm going to take a look at this article about the development time of these games. So, the game is taking the same amount of time to make as Legends Arceus. I think we can expect it to be released the first month of next year. I think I said everything about the game for now. I'll post more if I learn something new. So, yeah, again, isn't really a lot that can be said here. He hasn't really said a lot of crazy stuff, right? You know what I mean? Like, again, the game being set in the not too distant future, that seems like, like you can kind of guess that, I guess, right? It's easily a guessable thing. Apparently, the game, is going to be taken, you're going to have the starter Pokemon as controllable, right? Like, in part of the game where you play as them. I don't know what the starters are. Apparently, that's a little bit weird. My source didn't confirm that as of now. AZ is going to help with rebuilding the city. Okay, fair enough. Some rumors may suggest an evolution, but there's no new evolution planned. Again, not a lot of stuff here seems like that crazy necessarily, but something I want to talk about is that rebuilding of the city. So this is something that was sent, or actually sent to me, but also posted by Kingly, and he basically said the following, which is urban redevelopment plan. Now, the trailer showed us blueprints for a modernized take on the city. So I think of a countryside living take into a more modern setting. So here's the actual post. What does redevelopment mean? The active process of changing an area of a town by replacing old buildings, roads, etc. with new ones. And then, what does urbanization area mean? Urbanization is the increase in the proportion of people's living in towns and cities. Urbanization occurs because people move from rural areas. And then here, he says, the Pokemon website also suggests that there's an imbalance between humans and Pokemon. Redeveloping LUMIOSE alongside the settlers and the wild Pokemon could mean that could be a way to create balance for a harmonious future. You guys can see here, a new adventure awaits within LUMIOSE City. Again, within LUMIOSE City. A new adventure within LUMIOSE City. Not within Kalos. They never mentioned Kalos. They never bring up the Kalos region. They specifically bring up LUMIOSE City itself. Where an urban redevelopment plan, right? An urban redevelopment plan is underway to shape the city into a place that belongs to both people and Pokemon, right? But please look forward to seeing it for yourself. So he says he's curious if maybe the decision we make throughout the game will end up shaping how the city looks. Imagine we had all the different looking LUMIOSE cities at the end just purely because we chose differently throughout the story. I think that would be such a sick thing if they did do that, and I think that's something they could do 100%, because if the game is only set within one city, one location, and not like all of Kalos, that's way easier for them to make, and much more leaves much more options for paths and different choices, right? Like, that's what adds variety to it. Like, if they give us options for how our story turns out compared to every other person that plays this game, that would be ideal, in my opinion. Like, that would be genuinely ideal and perfect, and I would just love that. Like, that would just genuinely be just amazing, man. Like, I don't know why, but I think that would honestly be fantastic. So, in terms of this, I would love to know your guys' thoughts and opinions. There's not really much else I can say in regards to this exact point right now, because I don't really know. There's not really much else I can say. But in regards to this, I'd love to know your thoughts. We then also have this theory about Ratatoskr. So again, I already told you guys a bit earlier about the possible legendary and what it could be. Well, here's the thing. Light said, which new legendary Pokemon could we find in Legends ZA? Well, probably you don't know about the Aura Trio, which is connected to the Viking mythology with the Yggdrasil tree. Basically, Yveltal represents the death and would take inspiration from, and I know Swedish, man, and I can't even read that. Völfnir? A falcon sitting between the eyes of an eagle at the top of the tree. This, of course, is what it is based on. This Yveltal is based on this this literal falcon sitting between the eyes of an eagle at the top of the tree, which could symbolize the wisdom of the eagle. Xerneas represents the life and would be related to Dain or Dvalin, or Dunir or Durapur. The four deer that grazes underneath the branches of the tree, which collect dew in their horns and form the rivers of the world. Of course, this is what he's talking about, the actual, the tree of life, right? Like, the actual, inspiration for a lot of things, okay? But in this case, the inspiration of the three legendaries, and it also comes from Norse mythology, and you guys can see, the spread of these guys. But there is one part here that's missing, one part that we haven't talked about. We're going to get to that, because Zygarde represents the balance and would be based on Nidhögr, a dragon that gnaws at the roots of the tree. It appears and is said to herald Ragnarök, because that's not Ragnarok, you know what I mean? It's Ragnarök, and with the end of the world. Now, but there is also another important animal in this tree that does not appear in X and Y, a squirrel called Ratatoskr. Now, I'm a big fan of Ratatoskr because I played Ratatoskr in Smite, this game, and also, just a little bit of a fun little story. In school, the only reason I knew the name of this thing was because of playing Smite. So my teacher asked, "Oh, does anybody know the name of the little the squirrel from Norse mythology?" I was like, "Oh, Ratatoskr," and he was like, "Oh, good job, man." And also, that teacher, by the way, went to jail because he was a creep. Either way, so moving on. There is also another important animal in the tree that does not appear in X and Y, a squirrel called the Ratatoskr. He enjoys fueling spiteful relationships and sends messages between the eagle and the dragon Zygarde. In some interpretations, Ratatoskr is intent on destroying the Tree of Life. So, could this new legendary Pokemon appear in Legends ZA? Probably some of you already know this god squirrel during the appearance of God of War, Marvel, and of course Smite. So yes, it's a character that's made its appearance many times. It's a relevant character that you've definitely seen a few times. Ratatoskr exists in a lot of times. So yes, Ratatoskr is definitely one of the possible ones. I don't know. We do have a lot of squirrel Pokemon, to be fair. It's not like we're, it's not like we are empty in regards to that. We have enough squirrel Pokemon to start a freaking army. But I do think it would be not that crazy to have one. And in speaking of how this thing could possibly look, here is a little bit of a concept art by none else than our mad lad Subarashi of what this thing could look like. So he calls it Varavolt, which is the fourth hidden legendary of the Aura Trio, the Pokemon of communication, electric and fire type. Because yes, it is, like it said, it sends messages between, the top and the bottom of the tree, right? Zygarde, Yveltal, messages between them. That's what it sends. And apparently he thinks it could be an electric fire type, which yes, fire for stoking the fire, or the flames of hatred and anger, but also electricity because I guess it would be, kind of just matching, I guess, in this case. And he kind of made a little graph up here to show how it would perfectly be matched up against the other ones, which I think would be really cool. Basically, it was shafted by the three Aura Legends and forgotten in Kalos history, which I'm gonna be honest, I would love this. I think that'd be such a cool concept, and I just like the idea of it. Like, personally, I'm just a big fan of this, all right? Like, I just think it would be a really cool idea, and that's pretty much where I'm gonna leave this one at. But again, there is so much more to be talked about, and one of those things is, of course, going to be the last point in that actual post. So I already told you guys, we already know the actual release cycle of these Pokemon games and the development cycle. So you guys can see right here how long this stuff actually was in development. So this right here shows you exactly what happened. So if you look at the beginning graph here, the top graph with the actual orange part here, I don't know if my mouse is on screen so you guys can see what I'm talking about, but if you look at this part right here, this actual orange part. Now this shows you essentially when the development and how long the development took for Legends Arceus, and the green part shows you the development of Scarlet and Violet. So they started development in 2018, right? 2018 was when they began the development of Legends Arceus, right? That was the same time frame, okay? The exact same time frame that they also released Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Remember, in 2018, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee came out. So in the same time they started development of this, and I think we can also like save this image and actually get ourselves a nice, solid translation of it. Because if we have a translation of this, you know, we can get kind of a better idea of what's happening here. Otherwise, it might be a little bit complicated to understand what's going on. But let's see. So if we take a screenshot of this image and we translate it here, so this was actually a article, or not article, it was in an article that you guys can read right here, which says that Game Freak confirms when Pokemon Scarlet and Violet development began. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet developer Game Freak tells fans when the work began on its latest big titles, as well as how it created assets for each of the games. So, Scarlet and Violet are the latest mainline games in the beloved Pokemon franchise, as well as being given players the usual highlights of Pokemon title, including catching, etc., whatever. Basically, for the first time, allows players to venture through an open world, etc. However, in recent talks held during the Computer Entertainment Developer Conference, or CEDEC, the Pokemon developer Game Freak spoke openly about how it created assets for each title in the franchise, from Red and Blue to the latest games in the series. Game Freak detailed how it used different efforts to boost the graphics of Pokemon games over each generation. Something that also came up was how long Game Freak typically spends working on entries in the Pokemon franchise. It was confirmed that the work on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet began just as the work on Pokemon Sword and Shield was finishing up. So there is again the proof. I'm telling you, as soon as Scarlet and Violet ended, they probably started the work of their next generation, whatever that's going to be, Generation 10, right? Considering that the 8th generation of Pokemon games released in late 2019, it can be assumed that the work on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet has been going ever since then, giving Game Freak nearly 3 years to complete Generation 9. Exactly, the same time frame they always have. It seems that the 3 years is seen as the optimal amount of time Game Freak spends on producing Pokemon titles, as work on Pokemon Legends Arceus also reportedly took that amount of time. And here, you guys can see the actual post from Luchub, or Lutu, over on Twitter around this time frame, where he basically said it started CEDC 2020, hosted by Keiichi Maezawa of Game Freak. Full English translation, the presentation will come later, mostly just setting the story for how the Pokemon assets were developed throughout the series up until, Legends Arceus. And here, confirmation that Pokemon Legends Arceus began development in fall of 2018. So fall, right? Fall. Don't even need to translate it. Now we actually know what they're saying. So fall of 2018. That's the same time frame that we had the release, of actually Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Because remember, Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee was announced in, I think, May of 2018, right? That's when they announced Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So in that same time frame, they actually started working, they finished up Let's Go, and they started working on Legends. Legends became a new thing. And then, not really far after that, Scarlet Violet, starting around the time Generation 8 was finishing up. So that would imply that when that generation was finishing up. So when would that be? I guess sometime when they announced Sword and Shield, so sometime in maybe 2019 or 2018. It will still be 2018. Sometime at the end of 2018. So around the time before they announced actually Sword and Shield. So you can already assume that by the time they announced the next generation, they would already be starting on the generation after that. You know what I mean? They already will be starting on the next thing when they finish one thing. So that's, again, an interesting point. But back to the post here. It was stated in the CDC that Game Freak began work on the successful Legends Arceus even before the release of Sword and Shield in the fall of 2018. Considering the Legends Arceus released in early 2022, again, this means development took around 3 years. So what I'm trying to tell you here is that we can pretty much assume that Pokemon Legends ZA, okay? Pokemon Legends ZA most likely, again, it's just a guess, most likely started this development probably around the same time that, Scarlet and Violet like finished up their thing. Or sorry, Legends Arceus came out. So whenever Legends Arceus came out in 2022, it started its development. And so in 2025, it's going to be exactly 3 years, guys. It's going to be exactly 3 years again when this game comes out. Like again, it still follows that same mantra, that same standard and flow and everything. It still continues being the exact same thing we're used to. So again, it doesn't change. It stays the same. We have not changed the formula whatsoever. It still stays on that standard 3-year development cycle, and then we get like a new game, and then, you know, it starts up a new project. So again, this is pretty much what we can do, right? Look at the actual graph here. If we look at the graph, here's what we can pretty much determine. 2018 fall, they start working on Pokemon Legends Arceus. At this point, they haven't even announced Pokemon, Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield hasn't even been announced. And also, later on in 2018, so probably at the end of 2018, winter 2018, they fucking start working on Scarlet and Violet. Okay, I don't know why I just swore there. There's no reason for that. But they start working on Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Okay, like they just start working on that. Which, think about this now. They have 2 games at that point in the works. They had Legends and Scarlet and Violet at the same time, and they hadn't even announced Sword and Shield yet. So they already started working on that. So you can already assume that by the time that Scarlet and Violet came out in 2022 and Legends came out in 2022, at the same around that time, like right when those games were finishing up development before their releases, so January 2022, you can already assume that probably in 2021, end of 2021, or literally the beginning of 2022, they already started working on the next Legends game, most likely after, I would assume, because probably they must have wanted to see like how actually successful Legends would be, because keep in mind, Legends Arceus did really well. It was a single game. It wasn't a double release. It was a single game, and it still sold 15 million plus copies, which is incredibly large, man. That's almost the same amount. I think slightly less. There's like 200,000 copies difference between Legends Arceus and BDSP. And keep in mind, BDSP is 2 copies, and it was more hyped up initially because of the fact that it was going to be supposed to be, a remake. That's what people really wanted. And then, of course, everybody played it and everybody hated it. But either way, what I'm trying to say is we can already assume that around here, when these games come out, so 2022, right, the development of Generation 10 and the development of Legends ZA already began. Plus, whatever other projects they may have with other companies, similar to how BDSP was made by Ilka, there's probably other studios working on stuff as well, which is why I still think that this year has a chance of having an announcement for Pokemon, like a remake, because they've done this before. Like, remakes usually always used to get announced around May and June. Like, that used to be the standard. That's why I think there's always a chance that still could be happening, because that would mean there's a regular remake thing being made while these 2 big projects, aka Generation 10 and Legends ZA, are being worked on by this company. And then it would be the same thing, guys. Just like here, they would announce both of them, like they would announce, one of them early on and the other one a little bit later. Like, remember, Legends Arceus was announced when? It was announced in 2021 to release in 2022. And guess what? Scarlet and Violet was announced in 2022, right after the release of Legends Arceus. So trying to say that, like, oh, we're not going to get a new generation next year in 2025 is really stupid. I know some people will say like, oh, it's not going to happen because they're going to want to wait until 2026 to do the announcement of, with the 30-year anniversary. I actually researched it and I looked into previous Pokemon anniversaries, the 25th, the 20th, etc. Sometimes when it lines up, they actually do care about it. Other times, they don't really care to match up a new game release that's like a new generation necessarily with the 30th anniversary. It doesn't necessarily always have to match, right? Like, again, I know that people want to think that just because the 25th anniversary was matched up, I think, with a new generation release. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that, okay? Just keep that in mind. Just because they did it once doesn't necessarily mean that it's a constant thing that's going to be happening throughout. Just please keep that in mind. That's all I want to really say about that. But pretty much what I'm trying to say here, the kind of conclusion I want to get to is Legends ZA and Generation 10 are both in development. Both have probably been in development since 2022, if not a little bit longer. Like, who knows? Because pre-production is a certain thing as well. General production is one thing as well. Like, again, there is a bit of time between these things. And in this case, if we actually translate this image, I would love to just be able to translate it real quick, just to show you a little bit of what it actually has to say. But if we translate this image of the actual words here on the screen, and now I'm going to have to identify the language on its own here. So here we go. So basically, all we can really get out of this is their kind of IDs. So autumn 2018 is when they started that, released in November of 2022, released in January. So literally, like shortly after autumn, so basically winter, they started on Scarlet and Violet development. And then in terms of what they did here, they just wanted to make sure that this game was more action-oriented and this was more realistic and open world. And yeah, basically, that's pretty much what they went for here. And again, I just think it's intriguing, to say the least. Like, I think it's an interesting point, and I just want to bring it up for you guys and just see what you guys think about all this, right? It's an interesting situation we're in, to say the least. But yeah, also, I have a bunch of other theories I would love to talk about, but we're going to be ending off today's video in a little bit. First of all, I want to talk about this post right here. And this is a fantastic post, and I want to almost make a whole separate video on it, but I thought, you know what? Let's include it in this video today. So, new Pokémon Legends ZA theory. Paris Catacombs may have better odds in PLZA. During my live TikTok replay of Pokemon Alpha Sapphire today, we found a Kalos stone in Rustboro City's gym from the Glittering Cave in X and Y. Just look at Junichi Masuda's inspiration for the Glittering Cave. You guys can see right here, the stone was apparently excavated from a location known as the Glittering Cave, and the stone is displayed with the description, a Kalos stone. Of course, I've been playing X and Y recently, so I ran into that. In Pokemon Mega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, a stone from the cave is on display in the Rustboro gym with a description that reads, a Kalos stone. Junichi Masuda has stated in his blog that the Glittering Cave was based on the Catacombs of Paris. Ooh, okay. Interesting. And you guys can see right here the Glittering Cave. Now, I actually played through this part of the game right now. Like, I think I'm actually playing through this exact part in the game. I actually think I finished it. But it wasn't really that bad. People were saying, like, oh, it's, like, too long or whatever. But no, it was actually pretty simple. But what he says here is, now, in our previous discussion, we talked about the theoretical association between Mauvile's urban redevelopment initiative, because yes, he basically made a connection between Mauville and, of course, LUMIOSE City and the redevelopment of both. And I really want to go through his theory because it is pretty crazy, and I think it is really fun. But he says the connection was based on LUMIOSE's influence and the existence of a new Mauville power plant. And basically, he's trying to the connection he's trying to make here, I guess, is the following. So we just have to zoom in on the image. So I guess he's trying to say here that in Pokemon Mega Ruby Sapphire, you have the Kalos Stone, which could be connected to the map of Paris, which is, of course, the Catacombs. And this is starting to look that meme of that crazy guy who's, like, I think from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia or whatever, where he's, like, pulling all the things. So the map of Paris. And he's trying to say here that it could connect with, you know, New Mauville, which has a subterranean city extending 69 floors underground. This project died in development, aka redevelopment. When they were trying to redevelop Mauville, they tried to make it an underground city with 69 floors, which also 69, really? Come on, Game Freak. Greater Mauville Holdings were the ones who basically, the company that had an ambitious plan to which included urban redevelopment, the creation of infinity energy, and also a massive underground city. That's the biggest part. So Mauville already had the idea of a massive underground city. What stops Game Freak from doing that here? And this is where he's trying to say that basically that Rustboro serves as the establishment for the Devon Corporation, a company which makes many items for Pokemon trainers. The company headquarters is located in the northwest corner of the city and takes the appearance of a large, old-fashioned looking building, and a sign outside reads, Devon Corporations, for all your living needs, we make it. We make it all. Apart from developing and improved innovative items, the company also revised Pokemon fossils. The Devon Corporation workers are also attempting to build impossible machines, such as the ones that can transform people into Pokemon. Transform people into Pokemon. Where have I heard that before? Where have I heard that before? Transform people into Pokemon. Well, of course, Bill did it, but also, we literally had the ability to transform ourselves into Pokemon or control Pokemon in Pokemon Scarlet Violet's the Indigo Disc DLC with the Synchro Machine. And again, I still think the Synchro Machine is going to return in Legends ZA. It's going to be a mainline feature. Now, either way, he's trying to make all these connections, right? That's kind of what he's going for here. And he continues on down in the post saying that following. Apparently, the power plant in New Mauville City, which boasted 69 subterranean levels inhabited by Pokemon, thereby leading to its closure. Looks like we found even more possibilities today of the connections. May I also mention that Devon Corporation, who works on Infinity Energy, had a base in Rustboro, right? Which we just read about a second ago, which is, yes, very true. Very interesting as well. He says, to see the Junichi Masuda referring to Paris Catacombs in X and Y and Auras is too wild, but a big possible clue. Looks like we're beginning to scratch the surface of the potential inspiration for Legends ZA, which, yes, again, this theory, it might seem a little bit crazy, but sometimes crazy is good, man. Sometimes there is some value in crazy. And honestly, I think this makes total sense. Again, Junichi Masuda himself literally stated that he based the Glittering Cave off of the Catacombs. Would it be too crazy? Because remember, Paris, there's catacombs all underneath it. I wouldn't Google it if you're late at night and you don't want to be scared. But I'm telling you, like, he literally claimed and literally said himself that's what he based the Glittering Cave off of, right? What he based it on. So would it be too crazy to assume that the actual map of Paris, right? Because we have it right here, that all the catacombs that go underneath Paris, which there are so many, and not all of them are even like fully, you know, uncovered or discovered or whatever you want to call it. Like, all of them aren't also even very clear. But basically, would it be that crazy to assume that they might do the same thing here? Again, look at the city. Would it be that crazy that maybe they redevelop parts of the underground of LUMIOSE to basically be a new city, a new place to explore? Or maybe there is underneath LUMIOSE a whole world to explore. Think about Area Zero, how you have this giant space in the middle, but it's technically underground, right? Sure, it's in the middle of Paldea, but it's still underground. Would it be that crazy to assume that underneath LUMIOSE, there is a sprawling world of Pokemon, a sprawling world of things happening? Who knows? I personally think it's a great theory. And honestly, like I said, I'm going to talk more about this in a future video, but I think it's an interesting point to make for now. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to be it for today's rumor video. And of course, your daily updates on Pokemon Legends ZA. Subscribe for more. I'll see you guys in the next one.